The Montana sky stretched endlessly above Rowan's ranch, a canvas of deepening purple as the sun disappeared behind the distant mountain range. At 43, he'd grown accustomed to the silence that settled over the 300 acres like a heavy blanket. The only sounds were the wind whispering through the tall grass and the occasional creak of the old barn that had stood there since his grandfather's time. Rowan dragged an old sleeping bag from the farmhouse porch, his boots crunching on the dry earth. The house felt too empty tonight, its rooms echoing with memories of a life that once filled these walls. His parents had passed 5 years ago, within months of each other, and his younger brother had left for Seattle before that, chasing dreams that didn't include dirt under his fingernails or the smell of hay. The monotony of his days had become suffocating. Wake at dawn, feed the few remaining cattle, repair fences that seemed to break as fast as he fixed them, eat alone, sleep alone, repeat. He'd let most of the ranch operations go, keeping only what one man could manage. The rest lay fallow, a testament to what used to be. Tonight, something drove him outside. Maybe it was the weight of another silent dinner. Or maybe he just needed to feel something different, even if it was just the cool night air on his skin. He spread the sleeping bag near the old oak tree, where he used to camp as a boy when the ranch was full of life and laughter. The stars emerged one by one, pinpricks of light in the vast darkness. Rowan lay back, hands behind his head, and tried to remember the last real conversation he'd had. The feed store clerk 2 weeks ago. The brief exchange didn't count. He'd become a ghost on his own land. Sleep came fitfully, and somewhere in the depths of night a sound pulled him toward consciousness. Rhythmic, steady, the unmistakable clip-clop of hooves on hard ground. His eyes opened to darkness, his heart suddenly alert. There were no horses on his property. He'd sold the last one 3 years ago. Dawn was still an hour away when Rowan sat up, his breath forming small clouds in the cold November air. The sound had stopped, but he knew he hadn't imagined it. He reached for the flashlight he'd left beside the sleeping bag and swept the beam across the property. The light caught 2 eyes reflecting back at him from near the fence line, about 50 yards away. Rowan stood slowly, his joints stiff from sleeping on the ground. As he approached, the shape became clear, a horse standing perfectly still watching him. It was a mare, dark brown with a white blaze down her face, her coat matted with burrs and dirt. She looked exhausted, her head hanging low, but there was something in her eyes that caught him, not wildness, but a deep wariness, as if she'd traveled far and seen too much. "Easy, girl," Rowan spoke softly, his voice rusty from disuse. "Where'd you come from?" The horse didn't bolt. Instead, she took a tentative step forward, then another. No saddle, no bridle, no identification. Her hooves were worn, suggesting she'd been traveling for some time. Rowan noticed her ribs were slightly visible beneath the dirty coat. He walked slowly back to the barn, the horse following at a distance. Inside, he found an old bucket and filled it with water from the pump, then grabbed some hay from the dwindling supply. When he returned, the mare was waiting, and she drank deeply, desperately. "You've had a rough time, haven't you?" Rowan murmured, watching her eat. Something stirred in his chest, an almost forgotten feeling. Purpose. This creature needed him. As morning light spread across the valley, Rowan could see her better. She was well-bred, probably 7 or 8 years old, with good conformation despite her current state. Someone had cared for her once. The question was, who and why was she here? He spent the morning making calls. The local sheriff's office, the county animal control, neighboring ranches. No one had reported a missing horse matching her description. It was as if she'd appeared from nowhere. 3 days passed, and the mare, whom Rowan had started calling Willow for her graceful movements, began to trust him. She'd let him brush her coat, revealing a beautiful mahogany sheen beneath the dirt. She'd nuzzle his shoulder when he brought food, and follow him around the property like a shadow. On the fourth day, while checking her for injuries, Rowan found something he'd missed before. A small brand on her left shoulder, partially hidden by her mane. It was faded, old, but distinct, the letters HC intertwined with what looked like a mountain design. He photographed it and posted it to a few online equine groups, asking if anyone recognized the brand. Within hours, he had a response that made him sit down hard in his kitchen chair. "That's the old Hammond Creek Ranch brand," the message read. "Property was about 20 miles east of Billings, foreclosed in 2019. The family that owned it, the Castellanos, they died in a car accident just before losing the place. Heard all their horses were sold at auction, but maybe one got loose." Rowan's hands trembled slightly as he typed back, asking for more information. The respondent, a woman named Claire who ran a horse rescue in Billings, offered to drive out the next day. That night, Rowan sat on his porch with Willow grazing nearby, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and red. He thought about the Castellano family, people he'd never met, who'd lost everything. He thought about Willow, somehow surviving alone for years, finding her way here. "We're both lost, aren't we?" he said to the horse, who raised her head and looked at him with those knowing eyes. Claire arrived in a dusty pickup truck the next afternoon, her weathered face breaking into a smile when she saw Willow. She was in her mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and hands that spoke of decades of working with horses. "She's beautiful," Claire said, running her hands expertly over Willow's frame. "Thin, but not dangerously so. You've done well by her." Rowan shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable with the praise. "Just gave her food and water. Anyone would have done the same." "You'd be surprised," Claire replied, her tone knowing. She pulled out her phone and showed him photos. "This is Hammond Creek Ranch, or what's left of it. The Castellanos, Marcus and Sophia, they bred quarter horses. Beautiful animals. After they died, their son tried to keep it going, but the debt was too much." She swiped through more photos, and Rowan saw a thriving ranch, happy horses in green pastures, and a young couple standing proudly in front of a barn. Another photo showed a boy, maybe 10 years old, hugging a dark mare with a white blaze. "That's Willow," Claire said softly, "or I'm pretty sure it is. That's their son, Finn. He'd be about 18 now." Rowan's throat tightened. "Where is he?" "Foster system, last I heard. He was 15 when his parents died. No other family. The state took him." Claire's voice carried a weight of sadness. "I tried to track him down a couple of years ago for something else, but he'd aged out of the system. Could be anywhere." The thought of that boy losing everything, parents, home, even this horse, hit Rowan harder than expected. He understood loss, but at least he'd had time with his family, good years to hold on to. This kid had been stripped of everything in an instant. "I want to find him," Rowan said suddenly. "If Willow was his, he should know she's safe." Claire studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I might be able to help with that. I still have contacts with the system. No promises, but I'll make some calls." Over the next week, Claire became a regular visitor, bringing supplies for Willow and slowly becoming the first real friend Rowan had made in years. She told him about her rescue operation, the dozens of horses she'd saved, the volunteers who helped her. She talked about her own grief, a husband lost to cancer, children grown and scattered across the country. "Loneliness is its own kind of burden," she said one evening, sitting on Rowan's porch as they watched Willow roll in the grass. "But it doesn't have to be permanent." "I got used to it," Rowan admitted. "Thought it was just how things were now." "Things are what we make them," Claire replied. "You could have called animal control and had them take her. Instead, you called around, you cared. That's not a man who's given up, Rowan. That's a man who's been waiting for a reason to start again." 3 weeks after Willow appeared, Claire's truck pulled up with a passenger. Rowan's heart hammered as a young man stepped out, tall, lanky, with the same dark eyes from the photograph. Finn stood frozen, staring at Willow. The horse's head shot up, her ears pricked forward, and she began walking toward him, slowly at first, then faster. The young man's composure crumbled as she reached him, pressing her face against his chest as he wrapped his arms around her neck and wept. Rowan and Claire watched from a distance, giving them space. After several minutes, Finn wiped his eyes and walked over, his hand resting on Willow's shoulder, as if afraid she'd vanish. "I can't believe she's alive." Finn's voice was thick with emotion. "I looked everywhere after the auction. They told me all the horses were sold, but I could never find her. I thought—" He couldn't finish. "She found her way here," Rowan said simply. "And you're welcome to take her home, wherever that is now." Finn's face twisted with conflicting emotions. "I'm living in Bozeman, working construction, sharing an apartment with 3 other guys, no yard, barely making rent. I don't have a place for her." The words hung in the air, heavy with loss and reality. Rowan saw himself in this young man, someone life had beaten down, someone struggling to find solid ground. "What if she stayed here?" Rowan heard himself say. "You could visit whenever you want, help out around the ranch. Hell, I could use an extra pair of hands, and the work comes with pay." Finn's eyes widened. "You'd do that? For me?" "For both of you," Rowan corrected. "This place has been dying slowly for years. Maybe it's time to bring it back to life." Over the following months, the ranch transformed. Finn came every weekend, then started staying over, eventually moving into the spare bedroom. They repaired fences together, cleared overgrown fields, and slowly began rebuilding. Claire brought 2 more rescue horses that needed homes, and Rowan found himself actually looking forward to each new day. Finn talked about his parents as they worked, sharing memories that made them real to Rowan. In return, Rowan shared stories of his own family, the words coming easier than they had in years. They weren't replacing what they'd lost, but they were building something new. One evening, 6 months after Willow's arrival, the 3 of them, Rowan, Finn and Claire, sat on the porch watching the horses graze in the golden light of sunset. The ranch had 7 horses now, and plans for more. Claire's volunteers came twice a week. The silence that had once suffocated Rowan was replaced with purposeful noise, hoofbeats, laughter, life. "You know what's funny?" Finn said, scratching Willow's ears as she stood beside him. "I used to pray she was okay, wherever she was. Never imagined she'd be the one to bring me somewhere I belonged." Rowan smiled, feeling the truth of it. Willow hadn't brought mystical powers or magical solutions. She'd brought something far more powerful, a reason to connect, to care, to remember that isolation was a choice, not a fate. The lonely farmer who'd slept under the stars that November night was gone. In his place was a man rebuilding not just a ranch, but a life worth living, one hoofbeat, one conversation, one shared sunset at a time. And it had all started with a lost horse, finding her way home, bringing a lost boy and a lonely man along with her.